Have you ever wondered why you are the way you are? Why the same patterns, issues, and strengths seem to continually come up, and how you can expand from your baseline reactions and motivations? Well, what if there was a tool for deeper self-awareness and spiritual growth? Today's guest is an Enneagram expert who will share insights on using the Enneagram to unlock your potential, embrace your shadows, and begin a 40-day journey to spiritual and self-transformation. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Creative with Lauren LaGrasso. I'm Lauren LaGrasso. I'm a Webby Award-winning podcast host and producer, singer-songwriter, public speaker, and creative coach. This show sits at the intersection of creativity, mental health, self-development, and spirituality, and it is meant to give you tools to love, trust, and know yourself enough to claim your right to creativity and pursue whatever it is that's on your heart. Today's guest is Nhien Vuong, an internationally accredited Enneagram professor, a certified Enneagram teacher, and the founder of Evolving Enneagram. Nhien has a unique blend of credentials, holding a JD from Stanford Law School and a Master of Divinity from the Unity Institute and Seminary. If you're unfamiliar, the Enneagram is a personality framework that identifies 9 core types, each with its own patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I wanted to have Nhien on the podcast because the way she teaches the Enneagram speaks to me, and I thought after 6 years of doing a self-development and spirituality podcast, it was high time we talk about the Enneagram. From today's chat, you'll learn what the Enneagram is and how to find your type, how to use the Enneagram as a daily spiritual companion, what makes the Enneagram a path to soul, not just self, steps to begin a spiritual journey incorporating the Enneagram, and much more. Now here she is, Nhien Vuong. So I first came to the Enneagram during the pandemic when I was producing a podcast about the Enneagram. And as I was listening, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely a type 1 or type 4. And I was so excited to go home after it and look up which type I was. And I did the quiz and it said I was a type 3. And I was like, this is bullshit. That is not who I am. I am not a type 3. I am like a loving, creative, spiritual person. This doesn't make any sense for me. And I remember feeling really disappointed in myself that I had gotten that. And I'm like, is this what I become? Because I don't feel like it's who I really am. Like when I was younger, I cared more about just being caring and being myself and being in the moment. And as I've been in the world and been in LA and had to fight for everything in my career, have I just turned into this? And so I just kind of put it away. And in the back of my head, I thought, I'll take this quiz again in a few more years after I've done more therapy. And surely at that point, I will get a different answer. I kind of thought that would happen. And right before I started reading your book, I took another quiz. And sure enough, it said type 3, but with a wing 2.
Yes.
And that made sense to me because those two together kind of, it describes all of the things I've had to most work on, which are codependency and then detaching my worth from my outcomes and what I do. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my journey with the Enneagram. And thank you for being here, fellow type 3 and beautiful human and spiritual teacher. I just feel so honored to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm really honored. Well, it's always great when people actually have read your book, I guess for
It's
one,
nice.
and I love that you're open to sharing personally. That's so meaningful to me because, the actual connection, of this is the Enneagrams to me about our actual lived lives, us, it's not relevant unless it's relevant to us, if you will, so I can't wait to get into it with you.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Same here.
mm,
And I love your book. You describe the Enneagram in the book as a roadmap for wholeness. And I heard you in an interview
mm.
describe it as also a roadmap for your authentic self. For those who are uninitiated, what is the Enneagram?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So
Just to explain your life's work in a simple sentence.
in a few words. So maybe it's easier to start with what is it not? Okay.
Yes.
So everybody who knows the Enneagram knows it today as the Enneagram of personality, a personality typology. So I want to say, as you mentioned, I really see the Enneagram symbol as a map. And it's a map of you. It's a map of your consciousness. It's whether you like it or not, I'll point out some things in your consciousness. And I would say it's a map of our oneness, our wholeness, our our unity together. Because by locating where different people are on the map, I can identify patterns of how you relate to each other as well. So that's like the power of the Enneagram goes really deep. Now, the Enneagram of personality. So I'll say that we begin with the Enneagram of personality in our modern day by naming basically 9 foundationally different perspectives or paradigms through which we see the world, from which we live. And so understanding those paradigms helps us understand not just like what we do, but why we do it. And then the last thing I'll say is my book is called The Enneagram of the Soul. I definitely come from a spiritual perspective. And that spiritual perspective is the idea that you are not your personality, that you are this dynamic, radiant whole.
Mm.
And by naming where you are, I keep drawing this circle. So those who don't know, the Enneagram image is bound like up in a circle, that you're really just identifying that little one point on the circumference of the circle when you identify your Enneagram type. And then you get the luscious journey of journeying into the wholeness of the circle through learning about like the map, if you will. And I'll add through, maps can't walk the journey for us, right? They only show us the way. So the Enneagram can't do that for us. And that's where contemplative practices come in and become vital, at least as part of my journey, to like inform how we journey with the Enneagram, if you will, like the transformation that can happen. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So beautiful. So, and for people who hear about it and they're like, okay, there's 9 types. Well, I don't want to be one type. I can have a little bit of
Mm,
that kind of attitude. But I've heard
yes.
you talk about how, and I think this is what you were saying about the point and then having access to the full circle is
Yes.
um it's not to put you in a box, it's to find out what box you're in so you can get out, right?
Yes. I would say that the top scholar in the world, Russ Hudson, is credited as saying basically it names the box that you already live in that you don't know you live in. So we think every day we're getting up, we're making these conscious choices out of our own free will. And I'm like, actually, you're living a habit pattern and you don't know it. And once you identify the pattern, then you can begin to break free and live into your wholeness even more. So the pattern itself, like each type has like this ideal of like we've talked about, for the type 3, which is mine, the ideal is someone who appears successful, valuable, adds value to the world, all the things, is
Yeah.
accomplished, right? Is admired or respected. And anything that doesn't smack of that gets shut down. Like the pieces of me that maybe are frivolous, don't feel productive. The parts of me that love poetry got shut down for a long time. So the Enneagram helped me to see the things that I censor, the things that I shut out as part of my identity as well as my experience, because it doesn't fit that
Mm.
particular framework, that particular Enneagram framework. Yeah.
Wow. That's so fascinating because as you were saying all those things, I was going back and tracing the lines of my life and the choices that I've made.
Mm,
And specifically, when you mentioned that about poetry and shutting it out, like I look back on my acting career, because that's what I
mhm.
originally moved to LA to do.
Wow.
And because I didn't have success in the way I thought I should, I shut the door on that so hard. Like I wanted the success and I wanted acting more than I wanted to even be myself. And I couldn't even enjoy it anymore because it felt like I was failing so bad every day that I had to take a step away from it, which I think was healthy at the time. But had I known that that's what I was seeking through acting, I
Mm,
think I could have stuck with it because I would have been able to
wow.
find a way to do it for joy instead of validation.
Oh, that's what a beautiful insight. Yes, yes, that exactly. And my perspective on Enneagram inner work is compassion, compassion, compassion. And I do hear that you have insight around it and not necessarily like, judgment of like, but so many people come and they're like, had I known,
Yeah.
and they come with that framework. But it's so beautiful, but because it is like about there's an honoring you, and there's something about the type three's framework is so embedded in it. If I don't create value, if this is not an accomplishment, I'm not valued. And then if I'm not valued, I'm nothing. Like,
Yeah.
so I better go hustle to be somebody, right? And even if doing this other thing is not something I love. Like I was practicing law for many years before I had my spiritual awakening. And basically, how did I get locked into this? It's like I was good at it. I mean,
I
just
know. Oh,
that's the trap for the three.
yes.
To
Oh, I
discern
love
what's
our
yours.
younger
Yeah.
selves, our sweet younger selves.
Oh,
Will you
yeah.
tell that story because it is so powerful? How did you come to find the Enneagram and let go of that more traditional success pattern that you knew you could do? But like,
Right.
how did you step into that opening?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's really interesting looking back now because in the Enneagram, we learn that the threes, a heart type, but it uses the heart to scan the world for what's valuable to you, not to me. It's not about like my own heart, right? Over time, the idea is like the three has a hollow heart.
Mm.
And I remember this moment where I just hit bottom in my life. I started a 12-step program of recovery, like related to like relationships, because I was seeking this value outside of myself in someone validating me. But I bring this up because I remember describing it to someone at the time of like, it's not that I feel sad, it's that I feel nothing.
Mm.
And that it's almost like my emptiness is like it collapsed in on itself. And I'm like, yeah, you're smart and you're hardworking. How come you can't figure this out and make this work? Right. So in that moment, I left my marriage and I left my law job in the same weekend. And I found an Enneagram book. That's basically how it started. I'm like, oh my God, like this thing, right? And if you know some of my story, you know that I inaccurately mistyped myself as a 1 for years. Um,
Do a lot of people do that?
well, here's my theory.
Yeah, tell
It's
me.
like, do I really have a statistically relevant sample to know? So I don't know if a lot of people really do it. But what I believe happened is I believe that historically, like the type 3 description is more traditionally white male, American 3. So a lot of people couldn't see themselves in it if, say, you're a woman, you have different influences in how you show up, right? And I'll say on top of that, the way that people were describing ones as perfectionists, and I'm like, I identify with perfectionism, right? That's like really core and not really relegating it at all to threeness. Like I happen to know a lot of threes now that have a lot of that perfectionism in them, whether it's from trauma in the past of like trying to make up for, what wasn't with the love and approval that wasn't available in our childhoods, and I think so there's something to overly identifying perfectionism with the one
Mm.
in the historic like language of the Enneagram, but I don't want to just attribute it to like, oh yeah, it's the way they described it or the book's inadequate. I mean, so here's the humbling thing. The core issue of the type 3, the core emotional habit of the 3 is called deception. Like self-deception being the core. And so understanding that that's the very issue within threeness, that like that we adopt an ideal of like what's valuable and then live that and in a way where we don't even recognize that we're not living our truth. We really believe like this is what I want. This is what my truth is. So that self-deception is really strong as well. So I think that there are lots of factors leading into it. The ways that ones and threes they another thing they share in common is they can be workaholics.
Mm-hmm.
So behaviorally, there's that issue. And then they're also what we call rational competency types. And so that goes even deeper into the Enneagram, where we're like, there are triads. And rational competency is basically the triad of type 1, 3, and 5. The response to conflict is figure out the problem, solve the problem. And so all three of those numbers have that in common. So there's some similarities, there's some personal reasons, as a woman, and I think as you and I talked, as a woman interested in being of service to the world, right? Not just like for my own achievement. It's at least seemed like there was something about that. But then I have to look back and go, well, what what the world values about women is, "Oh my goodness, you're so nice." You're
Yeah.
right. I mean, to understand that that gets adopted as part of identity very early on, at least the assumed or ideal identity, and to be able to distinguish between the two-ness, type two-ness, the helper, that is actually organically, truthfully, spontaneously in me, and the one that it was like, well, people really respect givers in our society, especially when you're women,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So all these pieces, yeah.
That makes sense. So, okay, if we're going back to that time, I think in the book you said it was like a 6-month period where you were like discovering the Enneagram and like doing this self work, just realizing like you're totally going to change your life around. How did you go from quitting your job, leaving your marriage, going into this place that I think you were renting, reading this Enneagram book to then making it such a big part of your life?
So interestingly enough, in that moment, I hadn't begun my spiritual journey yet. So I found the Enneagram and it was like, oh, and what I identified with was this idea that like I felt like I was broken. I felt like there's something wrong with me. And I was like, oh, but the Enneagram tells me that that's a story. So maybe it's not true. So that was the beginning of like opening up to, hey, maybe there's another possible story for my life. So that was the beginning of that. And then it was a few years later when I hit bottom. And it was at that point that my spiritual awakening began.
Mm.
And it so happened, so I was in Northern California. I practiced law in San Francisco. And north of San Francisco in Marin County, there was this church, a Unity church. And so I found this Unity church. And I mean, I'd say within a year, I got a call to ministry. Like it was a very like
Wow.
interesting experience. Yeah, where I mean, I'm practicing law. I have like legal, like law school debt up the wazoo. And I was like, ministry, but it was like this moment, right? And so that journey led me to move to the Midwest, attend seminary, become an ordained Unity minister. But interestingly enough, at seminary, they taught the Enneagram. So the Enneagram was part of my life psychologically through that time. But then it was only really after seminary that I was like, oh, here's my meditation practice over here, and here's my Enneagram knowledge over there, but they were apart. And so over time, when I started like really integrating the material, that's really when the transformation took another level in my own life. And that's when I also started doing Enneagram work. Um, how should I say this? When I was a church minister, the piece of my work that was the most transformational was the Enneagram work. So at one point, I was like, "Oh, shoot." It's like I'm called to do this full time, and I
Wow.
had never worked for myself before. I didn't even know what that meant, and speaking from a 3 perspective, I wanted someone to tell me what to do. If you just tell me what to do, I'll do it well. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know how to ask myself, but, like, that was part of this interesting process of, like, having to discern what I really wanted to do and what I was called to do from within myself. It was so interesting, yeah. I know
Wow.
I feel like I'm jumping around a bit,
No,
but
no, I relate
okay.
so much to what you're saying. Honestly, I would just like to listen to your life story. It's like, well,
Yes.
then, but what am I supposed to do? Like, what do I do next? And how do I make
Right.
sure that I have everything set so that I can never fail and that there's no time where I don't have income? Just, I
Yes.
so relate to what you're saying. It's beautiful. I feel
Mm,
like before we go any further, for people listening who don't know the types at all, we're talking a
right.
lot about the numbers here. Could we just do a brief overview of the 9 types?
Yeah, if I could do all the legal disclaimers first, that this is
Yes, of
such a
course.
superficial treatment.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So the way that I teach the Enneagram is that there's this wholeness that is just ever present, and there's infinite love, infinite wisdom, this ground of being everywhere present. That's the way I hold life, like that's always here. And the idea is that each of us have lost sight of one face of that wholeness, one facet of it, and that each of the 9 numbers is a way we compensate, try to create in the world what we think we're missing, but we're not actually missing inside. And so from that perspective, I'll start with type 1. The type 1 has lost sight of the holy idea of like holy perfection, that all is actually fundamentally good, good. And the one's like, I don't see it, but I want it. So my personality is then designed to see what is flawed in every moment so I can make it good, so I can make it perfect with this very noble intention. And so the pain of the one is this critical mind that looks at every moment and is looking for what's wrong and looking for how to correct it. So that's like really core to the one's structure. And that could be, it can manifest as a strong inner critic. Ones can tend to be critical of those around them. But when you can get to the heart of, oh, what's missing is a knowing inside, right? And spiritual practice can help you get to the knowing inside that holy perfection is here so you can live from the place of perfection. If everything is already perfect, how will I live, right? So that's for the
Mm.
one. Yeah. Yeah. So for the type 2 has lost sight of like this holy idea of like holy freedom and holy will. Like it's a mix of these things. And the way that looks is almost like the wanting of the universe. There's one want operating for the good of all. And the two is like, no, what I desire, it's not going to happen. Like, and so the two has this like, oh, well, it's sort of a backward way. If I give you what you need, right? If I give you what you need, then maybe my needs will get met. And so the two strategy is giving to get. And the twos, oh, I'll say the ones are often called the perfectionist, the reformer. The twos are often called the helper or the giver. But a lot of people at the average level of health in two sees that like you could feel the strings attached to the two's
Mm.
giving, that it's like I'm giving for appreciation. I'm giving so you can see I'm a self-sacrificing and giving person, right? Again, at the average level of health. And but from that deep wound of like, it's not going to happen for me. Like my needs aren't that important. They're not going to be met by the universe. So the sweet path of the two of owning like their own lovability inside, that they're worthy of like their needs being met is so critical, right? But the two has to believe that first before they can receive from the world, right? Otherwise the two is like, I'm giving, but I don't need anything, right? Yeah. And so we talked a lot already about the three, but at the root of it, the three has lost sight of this holy idea of like, it's almost like holy law, the operation of the universe, the activity of the universe is flowing, is happening, right? The three is like, I'm separated from that action. I'm a separate doer, so I better hustle. Like, so the three is like, oh, life isn't just gonna flow with ease. Like I gotta work it, baby. And so like I become a worker bee as a three, right? There isn't a trust that the flow of that is happening for us and we're part of that flow. Almost like think of it as the wave doesn't move itself. The ocean moves and then the wave moves as a movement of the ocean. The three things, I'm a separate freaking wave. I'm gonna force myself up and go, kind of not like I'm part of this activity and movement of life. And so in that separate doerness, like how will I get my needs met? Like I will be the best doer. like I will do. And again, behind that, there's this, and there's a related like belief of like, I'm not valuable unless I do, unless
Mm.
I accomplish. I don't have intrinsic value, says the three before it again awakens, right? For the four has lost sight of like holy origin, this idea that I am inseparable from my source. And it's funny because then fours compensate for that by trying to be original. So you think about the word origin and originality. I need to be special, like to have the goods, to get my needs met, whatever it is. And so within that, the four usually develops a persona that is different. And so it's like tragic. I don't belong now. I'm different. I wanna belong. No, I don't wanna belong because if I belong, then I'm not special. I'm nobody. And so that like there's a connection to that uniqueness even in the suffering from this belief, like the sense of having been abandoned by that source,
Mm.
the sense of having been abandoned. And so the 4 needs to come home to itself to know that actually I am one with my source. I am one with holy origin. I have never been abandoned. And so it's like my life isn't tragic. It doesn't have to be tragically different from others. So, and stop me at any time, but
No, this is so beautiful. It's such a great way of putting it that goes way beyond just reading a description on a page. So helpful to hear you put
mm.
it in context.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So for the 5 has lost sight of the holy ideas of like holy omniscience and holy transparency. And together they're kind of like this holy omniscience is like the wisdom and knowing of the whole universe, all is known. And transparency relates to it's almost like the fluidity of our beingness. And the 5 is like, I am separate. I'm more like an island. It's like knowledge is, like over there, people are over there. And so the 5 develops this like avarice or this like hoarding of like, oh, if I'm an island, there's a scarcity of resources. So the 5 has the scarcity mentality around the world, and meaning the world gives too little and takes too much. And I'm gonna just keep what little I have over here by myself. So there's a 5 sense of wanting to stay apart and then observing the world from afar. I've described it as, you live in your castle, and then instead of going and getting out into the world, you're looking at picture books about the world. So the 5 strategy around like, I don't know enough to engage, to actually live among the world, within the world. And so the 5 things, if I read some more, if I learn enough, I will get the goods. So the 5s develop this personality that's withheld, that's like constantly looking to know or understand like the world, yeah, before it feels capable of expressing. And you'll notice, if you haven't already, I will say it rather than he or she, because I tend to think of it as a structure, that binds us, right? Not like our real personhood, but like the 5 structure. And yeah, so you can see 5s are head types, and they can feel very like withheld or withdrawn, very private people, and there is a sense of anything I give out there, I lose. The territory doesn't feel shared, if you will.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah. So again, you could feel how like from this perspective, so much compassion. If I believed this, if that was my stance, it makes total sense that I would do that? So yeah, yeah. So the 5 moving into the 6, which is also a head type, a mental type on the Enneagram. The 6 has lost sight of the holy ideas of holy faith and holy strength. This like that spirit is actually the ground of being. The 6 is like, I've lost connection with that ground. So life feels fragile. I feel vulnerable. So the 6's strategy is to create security in the outer world. And depending on the subtypes, instincts, this is a nuance of it. It might seek security in its partnership or relationship or security in its finances, like it depends if security in the group and the belief system. But the overall need is for safety and security. And so 6s, so again, if you believe the world is unstable like that, you're going to be vigilant. So you see 6s are like anticipating like what might go wrong. Like they have this like guardedness and this attention to, yeah, again, what could go wrong. So distinguishing it between the 1 and the 6, the 1 sees what is wrong. The 6 focuses on what could go wrong,
Mm.
future orientation. Because if I worry enough and if I anticipate against it, then it won't go wrong, right? So, but that's problematic if you're focused on it and you're planning a vacation and you forget to even think about what could go right. Like
Yeah.
so that's the issue with the 6s, right? And so the negativity bias there begins to happen, right? And again, the compassionate view being that, wow, you don't know your inner stability. So 6s don't even trust themselves. Like they like trusting their own intuition. And so when we work with 6s spiritually, it's like learning you can trust yourself, you know? Like you have this internal into the guidance that is a foundation. And 6 is like, maybe, like, I'm not sure, So again, this is, caricatures of each type here. But so moving into seven, the seven is a fear type, but doesn't always know it. So five, six, sevens are all in the head triad in the fear types. And the seven is called the enthusiast sometimes. It's really about seeking for pleasure. And it's a fear type and doesn't know it because behind the seeking for pleasure is the
Mm.
fear of pain and limitation. So a lot of sevens will be the ones who are like, you're there, but you're planning your next vacation. They're often the upbeat, fun loving, like enthusiasts of life. But what they're doing is they're running from any sense of pain or limitation for fear that it will just take them down. And so the seven, oh, going back, the seven has lost sight of holy wisdom and holy plan. And those holy ideas are like what tell you that, oh, there's a benevolent unfolding of the universe in this wise way. And the seven's like, nah, I'm going to plan for my vacations. I'm going to plan for my fun. I'm going to plan to make sure I'm not limited. And so usually the seven's plans are like five different options for Saturday, like just in case one doesn't work out. I can't be stuck in it. So I have to have an exit plan. Again, as a caricature, average level of health, as sevens learn that they do this, they learn how to actually become present in the moment. Because it's like, we know that we can only experience joy in the present moment. It's never in the future. But if your radar is for, oh my gosh, the holy plan of the universe is not unfolding, so I better think about it. I better strategize. Then my brain's always in the future and I never get to enjoy where I am. I never
Mm.
get to savor life, right? So they learn. So we have two more. The eight has lost sight of the holy idea of holy truth. And what this means from the Enneagram world is holy truth is this idea of non duality, like all is one. And the eight's like, no, there's good and there's bad. And so I have to guard against the badness of the world, right? And so the eight develops a structure of like, I am powerful. And so I will defend the weak and the vulnerable, and I will fight against the injustice of those, in power. The eight develops like this persona and then quashes its own like vulnerability inside. But if it's a dog eat dog world, like that's what you do, right? And so the eight's path is about leaning into like their vulnerability and but the understanding that they develop this structure in reaction to believing you can't be weak or vulnerable or you will be destroyed, right? And so this is where we get the people who can be bombastic and walk into a room like, dude, you don't need to be so big, like so like loud, like they don't know that. Just like we don't know we could slow down, right?
Right.
As threes. It's like they don't know that until they know that. Like there really is a good guy, bad guy. Are you on the good side or the bad side? And even like eights in partnership. Oh my gosh, if you're in an argument, suddenly your partner, if they become on the bad guy side, like, that's not good. Like, in a moment, it's like you see red and they are the enemy, so it's harder to see in nuance when you're an 8. It's a lot of
Mm.
black and white thinking, and holy truth, again, is that oneness. Okay, so then all going full circle to the 9. The 9 is sometimes called the peacemaker on the Enneagram or the mediator, and the 9's lost sight of the holy idea of holy love, and holy love is like this knowing of I am one with all. Right? And so the 9 is like the 9s are generally positive types, but the positivity doesn't include themselves. It's almost like saying the sun is shining. Isn't it shiny? Isn't love great? But they don't believe that they themselves are part of that shine, part of what matters. And so their strategy is almost like to duplicate holy love by merging. So you'll
Mm.
see that 9s accommodate in different ways. They blend in. It's like they'll see everybody's viewpoint, but their own. It's really hard for 9 to self-differentiate. You ask them what they want, and they're like, whatever. And in the moment, they really mean it because they've like almost like disassociated from their own wants and needs. Because then they could just blend in. It's almost blending in to belong, merging in order to matter. And sometimes the merging isn't with people. Sometimes it's with the couch. Sometimes it's with the comfort food. So not all are just like accommodating in terms of people, but they all have a way. It's sort of like it's narcotization. They
Mm.
fall asleep to themselves. Yeah, yeah. And again, from this point of view of wasn't that important anyway. And if I wake up, I might have to realize that I don't matter. And I'd rather just gloss it over a little bit. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, nice.
I know.
Okay. A couple questions. That was so beautiful. Thank for you for doing that because
Mm.
I know it's like trying to be like, could you please just summarize the Bible quickly?
Right.
Like, so,
Right.
so I really appreciate that you did that with the
Yeah.
Enneagram. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned of average health a couple times. What does that
Yes.
mean?
Yes. So again, the Enneagram is so complex, and I focus on the Enneagram as a tool for waking up spiritually. But the Enneagram is also a helpful tool for growing up, if you will, psychologically. And so we can there are actually descriptions. The Wisdom of the Enneagram is a great book that describes, like, oh, psychologically, when you're at a certain level of health, your number exhibits differently than if you're above average level of health or below level of health, right? Like you can imagine for the type 3, just as an example, average level of health. We're not like that deceit, which is like the vice of the 3, the passion of the 3, it doesn't mean that we're lying to people, but if you're in the unhealthy level of health, average 3, we just lie to ourselves, so we don't know it, but the unhealthy, you would be, maybe faking your resume or doing these other things, right? So you recognize that level of health comes into play when you're looking at the behavioral, like, expression of a number, right? And so a lot of times when people have issues with a number, it's not really the number. It's like because they've been dealing with someone with a lower level of health that
Uh,
exhibits some of the most painful, unskillful qualities of that number. And then you've like attributed, um, like everyone who has that number, you attribute to that quality, right?
right.
And so, yeah, yeah.
It
So that's a factor.
That makes so much sense. It reminds me of astrology because I liked something that I liked a lot of things you wrote in the book, but this one thing you wrote in
Mm,
the book where you talked about like this is not meant to be like a way of categorizing and judging people
yes.
and or memifying them and reducing them to that. And I find that happens a lot because I'm a big astrology fan.
Mm,
People will like do what would be even the term for it? Like astrological discrimination against
mm,
certain signs. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not what it's for. Like if it's
mm,
not expanding you and it's not expansive and it's not a tool for you to help you understand yourself and others and be more compassionate for yourself and others, then I don't think it's what the purpose is.
mm.
And like to your point, there's a high vibration and there's a low vibration of everything in the world, but that includes the Enneagram and your Enneagram type, right?
100%. Yes. It's thou shalt not weaponize the Enneagram is the idea. And like even like within Unity, we have something we call metaphysical malpractice. Like but this idea and we so like again, even the compassionate view of people who do that. And so it's so like this has just grown my compassion where my understanding, it's almost like it becomes this circle that's ever enlarging to be like, "Oh, I can even see why people do that." If you think about it, there is so much safety in like, "Oh, I know you," right? Like I can label you, like I understand it now, and there's no unknowns about it, right? They what we like in a way putting each other in boxes is like how we feel safe, right? And
Absolutely.
so yeah, and so I have compassion for the how people might like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that. Okay." And at the same time, uh, as you opened our conversation with like this idea is no, 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 no. We're looking at the box that we live in already. And we should have compassion for each other if we're locked in a box, right? If I'm operating in high threeness, if I'm seeing you not be able to stop your workaholism, it shouldn't be like, look at you, you're an unhealthy 3. Like it's more of like, oh man, that is the point of your suffering. You don't know that you're worthwhile enough. Like that's the piece, that like I hope that this kind of work brings forth for all of us. Like, if anything, it's for me to look at my own number and self-scrutinize in a way that helps me to break out of the box. And then for me to hold compassion for the ways you live in your box. So when I'm
Mm.
looking at someone else, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's harder for you. Like, sixes need to understand things in a way that I will never need to have like lined up for myself. Like, I don't need that, but you could bet that I need affirmation more than most other numbers I know, and like to have compassion for the different things that we need, right? That maybe are like that other people need that are different from our own versus oh, you're this number. Oh, I don't like, I'm sure I don't date Taurus.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah,
Just
totally. It is a
so
self-protective mechanism and you can have compassion for it that way. And it's very
mm,
important to call it out. I was so happy you
yes.
did. So if someone's listening and this is all new to them, and they're like, this sounds pretty interesting. I wonder what
Mm.
my type is. What is your advice on where to go, how to find out your type? Where does one turn to when they want to find out their Enneagram type?
So the best way is not the fast way. The best way is books, not mine actually. Mine is not the book for discovering your type. Wisdom of the Enneagram is a good one. Yes. So
Okay.
I'll just name that. It wasn't, I mean, you can. I think
I'll
that
tell you, it was what confirmed it for me, and I'll share why. But tell us about the wisdom of
yes.
the
Well,
Enneagram.
I hope people find. And so I mean, Wisdom of the Enneagram, I consider like the Enneagram primer. Like, it's like a core book with really, really good basic descriptions. And the best way really to me is you read books. Um there's a lot of debate about whether to take an online test. And if you're going to take one, I mentioned the Ready in the book, RHETI. That's like the long-standing classic, but some people say it's even like, yeah, 80%. But generally, if you take an online test, you should look at your like top three. And examine your top three to see like maybe it's not the top one you scored as, because here's the problem: we don't accurately self-identify is the problem with these things, right? So a part of me is like, okay, start the journey, read a few books. Wisdom of the Enneagram is one. The Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut is another good one because it describes like the nuances. Like for
Mm.
type three, it'll be like a self-preservation three, a social three, and a sexual three. These are nuances. I know,
Oh,
like in one
cool.
podcast, like we're gonna, yes, yes. And so you and I could well be different. We don't know if we're the same subtype of three, even if we're both threes, you
Right.
know. I'm guessing we're similar just from energetically,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that would be the way to do it. But I appreciate that that my book helped you to come into your number, because I do offer an Enneagram primer that was designed to like distill it, like move away from behavioral descriptions, which I'm like, you know, 9 different people can fix the picture on your wall for 9 different reasons. And if you just look at the behavior, you're not looking at the core. So I do try to do that in my Enneagram primer, but I do feel like you need to have a little bit of self-awareness already to like like to figure that out. And then I imagine if you're consistently like reading the 40 activations, I give activations for each of the numbers in my book. Oh, we haven't even talked about the
We
book.
should
At
just
least
to call out what it is. It's Enneagram of the Soul, which is I just read the title of your book. I'm like, I need to have her on my podcast because that's what I've been looking for. I think everything else I've read or heard about the Enneagram, while beautiful, many times beautiful, it just was like too in my head and not enough in my heart and not enough
Mm,
in my, definitely not as attached to my spirituality as I would have wanted it to be. And so I love
mm,
that this one brought everything together. Um, and I could tell from the title it would do that. But then as I was reading, I'm going to tell you why
mm,
this like solidified things for me. So in each activation, you give an offering or a question or a prayer for each different type. So I'm not kidding you, the first 20 that I did, I read all of them. All of the activations, like all the different offerings for each type were beautiful. And I related to all of them in a different way. But here's what finally got me to admit/realize I was a 3. Every time one for the 3 would come up, I would either laugh out loud, start crying, or feel like someone pierced me right through the heart. And with the two, it was like not quite as intense, but
Mm,
very heart piercing. Every single one was heart piercing. It was more like, oh
mm.
yeah, that's definitely true about me. The
Wow.
three, it was like, here's your mirror, baby girl.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And
Oh,
so it took me
wow.
out of my head and into my heart. And that's what I needed to finally make this.
Wow.
Would you call it a system? What do you call the Enneagram? The
Yeah,
system
yeah,
resonate.
right, and you think about it, it's like the 3 is actually the center. Oh, I didn't really elaborate on this. So, the Enneagram has, like, 3 centers of intelligence that, the Enneagram loves numbers, and the number 3 in particular, the symbolism of that, and I talk about it in my book a little bit. But so I did mention when I hit the head types, it's like 5, 6, 7, but I didn't mention that the body types are 9, 8, 9, 1, and then the heart types are 2, 3, and 4.
Hmm.
And yeah, when we say center of intelligence, we actually mean it's not like you're smarter in that area. It's not like head types are mentally smarter. It's that it's almost like it's the intelligence center through which we sift information. And so it's like the heart people are sifting for relational and heart information. And heart information is about like value and identity and things like that, right? And so yes, and I felt like there weren't enough books on the Enneagram written by heart people.
Yes.
So, a lot of head people
I was going
writing
to say,
books.
do all the head people just
Yeah,
waltz in and
they
write?
and they write them all because, it's because the Enneagram is such an intellectual system, if you will. It's such a complex system. I mean, like the head types can like thrive on it, but I felt like I really wanted to bring heart, compassion, in the sense of almost like the heart of all the numbers forward, right? So
Oh,
I
you
love that.
did
Oh,
it. You
oh
did
my
it.
goodness.
It was the first and it makes so much sense to me that like the primary one I resonate with and the secondary one I resonate with are both heart and feeling because this is the first time it really made sense to me. Like the heady
Wow.
ones love it for them, so happy for them. If something doesn't make me feel, I can't move. And
Wow.
this
Wow.
moved me.
That means so much to me. Yes, yes. That's so interesting, and, oh, I was just like, take a moment with that.
Yeah.
Let it sink in. Yeah, yeah, and so that kind of relates to, you mentioned my sort of how I came to all this. But if we go all the way back and I share my childhood story, that, like, I was really lonely as a child. I felt really alone. And it was books that saved my life. It was like, oh my God, there's some like that connection helped
Yeah.
me to like go, I am not crazy. Or I am not just like I felt like an alien on this earth, like it really, and I just didn't know because in my family nobody thought like me. And so I wanted to like send out like this message to people to be like, "You're not alone." Like like someone can maybe see you, and maybe it's part of the threes gift of like, I really tried to do that, not just for threes for heart types, but for all the numbers, and to really go, "Oh, I think this is what you care about, right? Might not be that what I care about, but like I want to give you this thing that you think you need, or this thing that helps you, like feel okay, right? Yeah, you are met in some way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that you bring up that books did that for you. And you also share that since childhood, this part makes me teary because anytime somebody like unleashes their creativity, it just really inspires me. But since childhood, you wanted to write a book and
Mm.
you go through how you were trying to like force it out and you're like, I know I can do this. You're muscling through. And then this book, you didn't even know it was a book at the time, but this divine inspiration starts flowing through you. And then I think you said it was a year later, this opportunity to publish came through with ease.
Oh my gosh.
What do you think allowed for this state of creative flow and for life meeting you
Mm.
and embracing you and saying, you can do this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, okay, so books were the first thing that saved my life. Meditation, what I call contemplative practice, is the second thing. Like, so when I hit a bottom in my life, there was this way I really got to understand that I look outside myself for worth. And when I started centering prayer practice, which is the first practice I teach, I mean, it's like there is nothing in the book I don't do. So the authenticity of like someone said to me once, it's like, oh no, it's not practice what you preach, it's preach what you practice.
Ooh, put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, 'cause that was like, yeah, it's sort of like otherwise, otherwise we leave ourselves to think, oh, we know what someone else needs. No, it's like just share what works for you. And
Mhm.
that's what this book is. Now I've gotten off track. Oh, okay. So go ahead.
So no, no, we were just talking about how you always wanted to write a book, but then this just
Yes.
all flowed. You tried to
Okay.
make it happen, and when you just
Yes.
allowed, it started
Yes.
coming through.
Yes. And so yes, I tried in that like I set aside my Fridays and I would sit there and at the same time I have to say because I had been practicing meditation for I don't know how long now since like 2004, right? So for a while now, it wasn't like I was beating myself up for not doing it. It was more of like I'm trying, right? And I think that the what centering prayer practice in particular, but all the practices I listed, what they've done for me is it's almost just like this easier surrender, this easier like listening for what is flowing naturally and saying yes
Mm.
to that. So what happened was I don't know if I told the full story in my book. I can't remember because you got to condense this stuff for books, but basically one of my clients asked me for some affirmations for some big event they were doing. And I had not done this before. And so I was like, "Oh, yeah, easy." So I wrote these. The funny thing is they were so late on their deadline. They had me do a presentation at their event, but they weren't able to like make pens or notebooks with these affirmations. And I looked at the affirmations and I showed them to my evolving Enneagram faculty. And they're like, "Hey, Yan, those are good." I'm like, "Oh." So I'm like, "Yeah, I guess, And then I was like, "Oh, and those were easy." That's a ease,
Mm.
flow. And I was like, "I'll write some more." And then I wrote for 90 days straight. I didn't even count the days, but I tell you, because people were like, "How did she crank that out?" And it was like, I took like 3 or 4 hours a day, but I didn't care. It was just like in this, like, I'm just writing and I loved it. And then at one point, I didn't want to push it. At one point, I was like, am I going to do one more? I think it's slowing down and maybe I'll see what I feel like. I mean, it was like that. It was like, I'll see. And I'm like, okay, I did it. And then I counted and it was like literally 90. It was like, that's wild. Like, but I didn't like plan that out. And then as I was posting them on Instagram, people are like, "Do you have a book?" I'm like, "Huh." It's like, "Is this my book? Is this my book?" And then I'm gonna add another layer. And again, like maybe I put it in the book, but even so, the other amazing thing is, so I didn't know what kind of book I was supposed to write at all. And the idea that this was like a devotional, so when I first came to Unity Seminary, there was this thing called the Daily Word, Unity's international publication, and it was a daily devotional using, like, a Bible quote, but, like, with an allegorical interpretation, and I remember when I arrived at school, there was an opening for people to be on the writing team, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I I'm such a corny person. I love inspirational things." It's I've been like quotes have inspired poetry and quotes have inspired me my whole life. I'm like, "Of course I wanna do this." So I applied, was immediately accepted, and worked there for 6 years. So I wrote these daily devotionals that almost every Unity church, like, reads as part of their Sunday service. I ended up writing an Enneagram version of this with and when you look back, you're like, "Of course, that's what you created. Of course,
Yeah,
that's the book you would write." But but I didn't make the connection till after I wrote it. It's like crazy. I'm like,
that's
"Of course,
amazing.
this is the book I would write."
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you were making the roadmap for yourself.
Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
that is so
Life is
beautiful.
amazing in that way.
It
That I
really
really believe,
is.
yeah, it uses everything that we love and that we are, I believe, for that next moment of life. Everything, even down to like my lawyering. And, had I not been a lawyer, I wouldn't have been picked to be on my Unity Board of Trustees, which ended up being the necessary leadership I needed when I applied for seminary. I mean, there were things that were part of my path that maybe I wasn't even thrilled about, that all became a part of the journey, Yeah. The quotes in the book. Yeah. I was like, I
Yes.
was
Oh
like
my gosh, one of the
enthusiastic.
quotes this morning. So I'm going to recommend to my creative cuties listening. I usually am not like a huge reader. I read a lot for the podcast, but
Mhm.
I don't read for pleasure usually. Like I read probably a three thing. Like I'm always reading to like
You
get
read
better
for
or
work.
get the job done or
No.
achieve something. Or like if it's short and I can like move through it to move to the next thing.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
but there was something I did this morning, which was read your book when I woke up,
Oh.
like before I did anything else, because I had been reading it at night, but I'm like, I'm going to read it this morning. And my nervous system has been so regulated all
Mm.
day. And the only thing different I did today was specifically read your book.
Oh.
So I highly recommend Enneagram of the Soul, and I highly recommend reading it in the morning. And I want to read this quote to you because it just struck me. It really brought me to tears. And this is one of the ones
Mm.
that you share. The spiritual quest is a journey without distance. You travel from where you are now to where you have always been, from ignorance to recognition. For all you do is see for the first time what you have always been looking at. Whoever heard of a path that brings you to yourself or a method that makes you what you have always been? Spirituality, after all, is only a matter of becoming what you already are. And that was Anthony DeMello, an Indian
Mm.
priest and psychotherapist. I mean, that's just one of the many beautiful quotes and wisdom. I mean, all of your actual quotes that you wrote too from your own brain and
Mm.
heart were so beautiful.
Mm.
So, okay, we know these things about ourselves, right? Like we know what type we are. And what is the Enneagram supposed to do for us? So once we know kind of the way we're driven or the way we think we're supposed to get love
Mm.
in the world or gain worth,
Mhm.
how do we, through the Enneagram and through self work, get to a optimal level of health?
I thought your question was going to go one way. I might make a distinction
Yeah.
between what I call health when we're talking about health earlier, we're talking about psychological health, right? And I tend to think of things on in two lines. And this is Ken Wilber's work on integral theory that says actually they're like parallel lines. One is the spiritual waking up, and the other is the psychological growing up. And I actually think both are really vital, like to being the three's goal of being the perfect human being on earth. So, like, so in order to do that, we want to be both wa awake and also mature, right? And so the Enneagram can actually offer a map for doing both. But the way I focus on it is I definitely focus on the waking up first because I have this deep belief that there is an underlying love and wholeness that is the fabric of the universe. And that these are, like, again, the 9 ways we don't know it. And so if we don't operate from it, I think that's where most of what I would call, I don't really like the word evil, but what I call like the unskillful, cruel behaviors of the world, the grasping of people, the competitiveness of the greed of people. To me, again, it's not like, oh, because you're a bad person. It's because you don't know.
Mm.
It's because you don't know something deep within yourself that you already have. And so for me, when I support people with the Enneagram, it's like, what is your one of 9 brand of not knowing? And based on that, we know what the spiritual balm or salve is, the waking up to this facet of your truth that is missing for you. And so how do we practice that for instance, for the 3, it is the knowing that my being is enough
Mm.
rather than my doing, right? It's the cliche, it's a human being, not a human doing. Like, but the 3 is like, not so sure about that. They're like, well, it's my doing that makes my being good, So, you know, but but imagine like who I am today. It's like there's so much more space for everyone else to thrive if I don't feel like I need to be the best. If like somehow your achievement takes away from mine, right? So supporting each other and living from this ground of being inside that imagine a world in which everyone is living from that place, right? Where there's enough love, enough security, but not from the material world, but from your inner sense of spirit.
Mm.
Right? And so then you get to live like the gift. So in my Enneagram primer, I describe, okay, when you're fixated, you look like this. When you start to embody this knowing of oneness and wholeness, here are some of the special gifts that your number tends to offer the world. Right. So that's where I don't look at it like, oh, it's just bad. Let's get away from our egos and our Enneagram type. It's actually no, like there's a gift in it. It's just that here's maybe a way of looking at it. When we think about being egocentric, I really think about it as almost like you're living from your type is the center. Like we're living from the separate self as the center, right? Instead of the center of the circle. Like, but if I'm living from my wholeness and radiating out, I radiate through the type three. And so the gifts I give the world are still very much related to the three's topics like purpose, and efficiency and productivity. Because, actually achieving what we want, even if you're an artist, it's nice to actually finish, like, right? And so there's a gift in all of them. There's a compulsion in every number, right? And so that's the unskillfulness, but within every number are profound sacred gifts that I believe are gifts for the world. And so when we embody our wholeness through these practices that help us disidentify from our personality as like the center or seat of who we are. And then we live from this like more like unitive state. And then the way that we share our gifts is almost like is our spirit being used in service to the ego? Or is that egoic strength, the personality being used in service to the spirit,
Mm.
right? The gifts of the three being used in service to like my true self, if you will.
Mm.
Right. Yeah.
And then the activations, it seems, would be a method of uncovering that true self.
Yes, of helping to, impart if you've noticed, um, some of them are soothing and some of them are convicting. Right? That they're designed to, like, offset the habit of your type. It's almost like so it budges the walls of that prison, that we all live in. And so it's like, oh, there's a little more freedom now. Like a three, like, oh, I'm free to have joy and experience something joyful. How about that?
Yeah, sit
Something
on the couch
frivolous.
without beating myself up about it because I could be
Exactly.
doing something efficient.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's designed to help, like, if you think of the Enneagram pull or compulsion as like a muscle, the muscle is so strong. We just lit I carried my purse on my left arm. You can definitely tell, like as a woman, like if you do that for a while, like it's really awkward to carry it on my right arm or my right shoulder, right? Because my body, I don't even realize it's tilted.
Right.
And so it's like the threes tilt toward doing is so strong. It's a habit and you just do it and you're not like free to choose anything else. Like you're not free to choose rest, not free to choose joy. Not, like the idea of doing something purposeless just for fun is like ridiculous. But if you love yourself, you might want that. But if you don't love yourself and you're earning your worth, you're never, like you'll never do enough, right? So yeah, so we're offsetting the muscle that is like distorted, right? But we don't even know it because we've been walking like that for so long, so that it, like, balances out. So it's not, again, that doing is wrong, it's just like, "Hey, sometimes I wanna lean that way too." Like, so it's like,
Yeah. Have more balance.
have a choice. Yeah.
Is there one activation from the book that you feel particularly strong about or that you'd really like to share?
Hmm. Wow, that's a hard
I know. There's so many
it was
good ones.
hard to it was hard to pick my 40 from the 90. Um, I think though that, this is probably perfect for the 3. If anything, it's the last one. So if there's one, it's the last one that says, there's some affirmations. It's almost like at the end of the day, it's like, be at peace. At the end of the day, it's enough. So what if there is really nothing more you need to be or do right here and right now? That's how I end the book. That's
Yeah.
it.
Don't
Yeah.
we all
Yes.
need that? Like,
Yeah.
to just
Well,
know that right now and who we are is enough.
yes. Yeah. And I'll throw into that, that quote that you quoted earlier, essentially the idea that it's a journey without distance to a home you never left, you know, that idea. And it's the paradox of the journey, which is like we have to journey to find that we're already home. So there's this journey we take, but the difference is we can see it as an arduous, like it's a journey because I'm inadequate, or it could be a journey where we're skipping along. We're like, well, look, there are flowers on the journey. There are different things. There are hard things. There are good things. And it just changes the way we journey in life, if you will. This
Yeah.
perspective changes. Like, oh, okay. So now we can enjoy it. Like, yeah, well, maybe we're still growing, but we're not growing from I'm inadequate and therefore I need to grow. It's more of like, I'm already whole, but a forest could be already whole and it still continues to grow and change, you know? And so that's just a natural piece of our being, not from a place of lack, if you will, you know?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
totally makes sense to me because while I haven't really been walking with the Enneagram, I
Mm,
have over the last 5 years really realized how I've been completely externally motivated instead
mm,
of internally motivated and then motivated by my relationship with God.
mm,
And I have really done a lot of inner work to believe, and I actually believe this, that who I am is the best thing about me.
mm,
And I have big dreams. Like, I still have big dreams, but the latest thing I've been doing is public speaking. And this is the first time in my life I've approached something and had big dreams, but I've looked at the journey as fun instead of
mm,
being like, I have to do this. And if I don't do it right, everything will be for nothing. And just beating myself up the whole way.
mm. Yeah.
I'm like, this is awesome. I know that I want to do this. I feel like I'm well equipped to do it, and I'm going to do
Mm.
everything I can. And I know no matter what, whether another accomplishment happens for me in my entire life, I will still be worthy and I will still be good. And
Oh.
I think that's the difference. It's not to say I don't struggle with this. Like, I know for the rest of my life, I'm going to be working on unwinding my worth from my work and my
Mm.
output.
Mhm.
And like, if you had said the same thing to me 5 years ago, my face would have gone blank and I would have had no idea what you were talking about, even though these are very simple words.
Yes.
So I think that that's a good example of what can happen for our sweet listener if they
Mm.
start to get in touch with this box that they're in, to understand, like, yes, I'm driven that way, but this can also be my gift. And at the end of the day, my personality isn't who I am, or the way I've been taught to be driven through the world isn't who I am. I am who I am. The higher self is who I am. My
Mm.
relationship with a higher power, if you believe in that, is who I am. But all this other
Mhm.
stuff, just some things I do.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. And I love that you described this even without knowing the Enneagram. I think that like newer Enneagram teachers, I think it's true for everyone. Like when you first come onto something, you do it dogmatically. Like the Enneagram is the way, everybody, like I'm like, it's not the only way. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Enneagram and obviously, but the understanding if the Enneagram is a map, you are the territory. Your life is the territory. If it's an accurate map, it's actually going to describe what you lived even if you didn't know the Enneagram. You see that? So because it's there to map, but but it'll help people who are therapists or other people who are on the journey be like, "Oh, we can maybe like arrive there a little bit more easily if we have the map, right?" But you're still living the territory of the 3 and it makes so much sense and it's so beautiful and I'm so happy for you, right? That you have touched into this sense of self that allows you the freedom to choose something you think would be fun,
Yeah.
you know? Right?
So
And
true.
yeah, right? But and with the humility to recognize also that and I teach this, which is the Enneagram habit will always be there. It's just almost like after some time, the voice isn't as much the boss. Like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Right.
And I also noticed, so part of why I also think the book is great, no matter where you are in your journey with Enneagram or
Mhm.
self-development or spirituality, is it shows up in smaller ways. Like I think I actually am pretty good on like the big picture, taking my worth out of my work and outcomes. The smaller ways that it really shows up for me are like in feeling bad about myself if I'm just relaxing, like having fun, but having a dual consciousness that I could be working right now. So I love the activations and the reminders of practicing it in the smaller moments, because those smaller moments build up to become something big and can
Mhm.
suck a lot of life out of you if you're not aware.
Yes. Ooh, I love that. I love that. And I wish I could remember who said it, but you reminded me of the quote, like, that how we spend our days is how we live our lives, you know? That all of that matters, and the deeper you go, it is actually nuanced. Like, my understanding of threeness isn't like, "Oh, I totally was so fake." It's a in the moment, subtle curation and adjustment of how I'm showing up to fit my environment and abandon myself.
Yeah.
Like that is it's subtle. And like the more you're aware of it, it's like, "Oh, I just did that." And again, I'm not gonna judge myself for it. And it might not even be bad. Some places it's skillful to adjust. But what I know about myself is if I overly adjust, if I adjust too often, then that emptiness comes back. And I realize I have left myself to do what I thought was appropriate to the situation. And so I'm not a bad person for doing it, but I don't feel fulfilled. And that's my clue, right? And so the idea is that I'm worthy of being fulfilled and of choosing my authentic self and recognizing the ways I subtly leave myself to show you what I think you want to see, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your book is a beautiful offering to help people come home to themselves and remember the beauty of their true essence. And
Mm.
I so appreciate it. I'm going to continue to read it in the mornings
Oh, I love hearing
and
that.
sit with it. And yeah, thank you for helping me finally make sense of the Enneagram. And I'm excited to see how it fits into my spiritual and self development journey. But your book was really the opening for me. And I thank you for that.
Wow. Oh, it means so much to me to hear that. Yeah. Thank you for having me here too. Really meaningful to chat with you.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to my guest, Nhien Vuong. For more information on Nhien, follow her at Evolving Enneagram and find her new book, The Enneagram of the Soul, wherever good books are found. Unleash Your Inner Creative is hosted and executive produced by me, Lauren Lagrasso. Edited by Blondel Garcon. Produced by Rachel Fulton, with theme music by Liz Full. Again, thank you, Creative Cutie, for listening. If you like what you heard today, remember to rate, review, and follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Share the show with a friend and post about it on social media. Tag me at Lauren Lagrasso and at Unleash Your Inner Creative, and I will repost to share my gratitude. Also tag at Evolving Enneagram so she can share as well. My wish for you this week is that you take a moment to explore your Enneagram type and see how it can deepen your connection to yourself. Let it be a tool for greater self-awareness, helping you embrace your strengths and your challenges with compassion. I love you and I believe in you. Talk with you next week.